January 3rd loomed ever larger on the Republican presidential calendar today, the date of the Iowa caucuses. 6 of the 7 hopefuls campaigned in the state, some hoping for a final surge to victory, others hoping just to survive.
I don't want to.
The home stretch in Iowa was crowded with candidates today, racing from one event to the next, pressing the flesh, pulling out all the stops.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
New polls show Mitt Romney leading or tied for the lead. Romney had once played down Iowa, but no more. He rolled out a minute-long TV ad today extolling the spirit of enterprise.
The American ideals of economic freedom and opportunity need a clear and unapologetic defense, and I intend to make it because I have lived it.
How are you? Good.
The former Massachusetts governor played up the same theme in campaign stops today, here in Cedar Falls.
In America, I want America to remain American. I want us to have good jobs and an opportunity society, and the principles that made America great in the past are the principles I believe that will keep our economy strong in the future.
Texas Congressman Ron Paul was drawing big crowds and running second or even tied with Romney for the lead.
This is what the dramatic difference is between now and even 4 years ago. The people know that we have a serious economic problem to deal with. And most people now, I believe the statistics and the polling shows that 70% of the American people are now saying enough is enough.
He got another boost overnight when Iowa State Senator Kent Sorensen endorsed him. Sorensen had been state chairman for Minnesota Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann.
In 2010, when I was running for the state senate, Congressman Paul came and actually did 3 separate events for me, and I felt like that he was by my side when I had a tough race. Now it's my duty to be by his side when he has an opportunity and he's in a tough race himself.
Bachmann insisted she's staying in the race despite lagging numbers. And her campaign claimed Sorensen was paid a large sum of money to defect, a claim Ron Paul denied. Meanwhile, things were looking up for Rick Santorum, who tripled his support in the new polls. The former Pennsylvania senator was looking to seize on the momentum, starting on NBC's Today Show.
This has been different than everybody else that's sort of risen in this race, that they haven't been tested, and we have. And people know that there's authenticity here, that they can trust me, that what I say that I'm going to do is what I've done in the past.
But while Santorum was rising, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich appeared to be in free fall, down 20 points from a few weeks back. In Sioux City today, he stayed away from attacks on rival Republicans and focused instead on President Obama.
He ran on Yes We Can. His new slogan is going to be Why We Couldn't. I believe we can design a contract with America that will be enormously powerful. We can run as a team. We can wage a campaign in which by October it is virtually impossible to defend Obama.
Texas Governor Rick Perry was likewise well back in the field. And this morning in Washington, Iowa, he was peppered with questions about whether he might quit after the caucuses.
5th place good enough to keep it going?
We're going on.
Regardless of the outcome?
We're going on.
There's no outcome.
Pressing on.
One candidate shunned Iowa. John Huntsman, former Utah governor, defended his decision to focus entirely on New Hampshire. They pick corn in Iowa, he said. They actually pick presidents here in New Hampshire.
And I say, we got to quit looking at.
So that's where things stand in Iowa today. But why should we care? And what does Iowa's first in the nation vote tell us anyway? We explore that now with historian Richard Norton Smith, scholar in residence at George Mason University, and Jeff Stein, vice chair of the Board of Trustees for the State Historical Society of Iowa. Now, Richard, one of my colleagues called you today, and you said, almost without being prompted, I'm sick of Iowa. Well, so we said, come and tell us about this.
Let me draw a very important distinction between Iowa, a place I lived very happily for 6 years, and for whose people I have great affection, and the over-reported, over-analyzed, over-interpreted kabuki theater that is the, quote, Iowa caucus.
Why is it kabuki theater?
Well, gosh. We had the Ames straw poll, which we're told is the caucus before the caucus. And we're supposed to pay a lot of attention to the Ames straw poll. And guess what? Michelle Bachmann won the poll, and her campaign has been downhill ever since. A lot of this is the media. A lot of this is the amount of money that is poured into the state. Someone has to go first, and Iowa is entitled as anyone. Ultimately, it's unrepresentative because of the nature of the caucus as opposed to a primary election, and because it's further unrepresentative because within that caucus turnout there is a disproportionate emphasis given to social conservatives and particularly to evangelical voters.
All right, let me get Jeff Stein in here from Iowa. You can explain to us what's the case for Iowa mattering? And Richard just laid out some of the things we've heard often, particularly the lack of it being representative of the rest of the country.
Well, I think it's very representative of rank-and-file America. We have a very educated population. The people in Iowa take this job, this responsibility very seriously. You're going to have about 600,000 registered Republicans in Iowa at the time of the caucus, and granted, only about 20% of them will show up. But those are the most interested partisans. And what we're talking about here is a partisan nominating process. The Democrats will be meeting that night as well. And so as each party strives to nominate its choice, I think it works just as well, and actually better if you care about a strong partisan system, than a wide open primary where, for example, a week after Iowa in New Hampshire, all you have to do is be a registered voter and show up and take whatever ballot you want. It's a purer process because the Republicans will meet with Republicans, Democrats meet with Democrats, and in Iowa there are more independents than either Republicans or Democrats. So while it may be a narrow slice, it is a very representative slice of what it is purported to be, a partisan nominating process.
Okay, Richard, so it is what it is, he's saying. It is a partisan process, and it is that small face-to-face politics that you often don't get.
Sure. The word he used was purist, and I could not agree more. It's all about purity. It's about winnowing out people who don't meet your ideological standard.
You're using pure in not quite the same way as he's using it.
All you need to know, in 2000, Alan Keyes got 15% of the caucus vote. Gary Bauer got almost 10% of the caucus vote. Iowa traditionally has been skewed toward the extremes of both parties. And at a time when lots of Americans feel disenfranchised by the political process, they look at this and they see this as in many ways an example of what contributes to their frustration. The purists, the ideological hardliners, the true believers, the angry electorate.
Jeff Stein, that's one of the charges, that this actually skewers and hurts our politics by the way it's set up.
Well, I concur with the earlier comment that it is how it's interpreted in terms of how we look at it from a media standpoint. Whoever is first is going to be overreported, I think. I think what we have to look at is that Iowa is one step in a much longer game, where New Hampshire has a very different way, South Carolina, Florida, and I think they all work together toward the nomination process. If you simply look at the Iowa results and take them too far, that's inappropriate, that's misreporting. But I think we also need to note that as we sit here today, the most recent poll has the most moderate candidate, Mitt Romney, in first place. And I've said for a long time, I think there are a number of more moderate Republicans who you may not hear much from in the months leading up to the caucus, but who intend to show up on January 3rd. And I think you're starting to see that in the polling now.
And Richard, that goes back in part to where you started, that you think this is just part of the problem. Maybe even the main problem is it's overinterpreted by and overplayed by the media.
Again, I mean, Iowa, I don't mean to pick on Iowa per se, but I tell you, there's one more reason to look askance at all of this, and that is there is no shortage of people in the media, and some in Iowa, who will be perfectly prepared on Wednesday morning to say that the whole caucus was irrelevant if Ron Paul wins.
They'll just say, never mind.
Precisely.
And that tells you...
Or to a lesser degree, if Rick Santorum, for example, who appears to be surging at the end, were to pull out an upset victory. And again, it goes to the heart less of whatever flaws there may be in the process as it plays out than in the way that the media chooses to interpret it.
Jeff Stein, is it possible that on Wednesday we wake up and you have people there and people back here in Washington are saying, never mind, now we'll move on. Of course, we'll move on to New Hampshire, right?
Well, the concept that the Republican electorate in Iowa is angry, I think is a misreading. I think that the fact that half the people in Iowa who are going to show up on January 3rd don't yet know for sure who they're going to vote for is not because they can't find anyone they're enthusiastic about. It's because they very much want to defeat an incumbent in the fall, and they want to make sure they do it right. I think that if Ron Paul wins, there's going to be the temptation nationally to just dismiss it, and I think that's misreading the reason for the voting. And I don't think it's anger. I think it's dissatisfaction with how things are running, and to a very large degree, it's a protest vote.
Okay, so just our last minute here, Richard, and I'll give Jeff Stein a chance too. How do you want to leave the viewers here? Does Iowa matter or not?
Sure, Iowa matters. Iowa matters for a number of reasons. If nothing else, Iowa, as has been said many times, winnows the field. There is no way that these 6 candidates are all going to credibly go on to New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Florida.
But don't overdo it. Don't overinterpret it.
Let the electorate interpret the results.
Jeff Stein?
I totally agree. You have to take Iowa in context, although it is very important. A couple of candidates, Bachmann and Santorum, principally, have put all their eggs in the Iowa basket. And so literally on the morning after, the future of their campaigns will be told. But generally, we just need to sit back and realize this is the first step in a long marathon.
All right. Jeff Stein, Richard Norton Smith, thanks so much.
You bet.
Thank you.